Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody watching around the world. I see we're now live on YouTube and being streamed, so it's now time to begin the opening ceremony of the World Business Angels Investment Forum USA Country Office. So, quickly to introduce myself, my name is Kevin Hinn. I'm a World Business Angels Forum Senator for Monaco, and I also act as the Secretary General of the Junior Chamber International, the world's foremost global network for enterprising young leaders. To this effect, I'm also a member of the board of the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens, and also of the International Chamber of Commerce, World Chambers Federation. And I am immensely honored to be your MC for this opening ceremony. So during the session, over the next few hours, we will be working in several different parts. So the first part will be a whole lineup of amazing keynote speakers, including Mr. Baybars Altuntas, the Executive Chairman of the World Business Angels Investment Forum, Gerard Daché, the Executive Director of the Government Blockchain Association in the USA, President Itai Manyere of JCI, all the way from Zimbabwe, Congressman Jim Moran, from the former Congress member of the US House of Representatives and current policy advisor at Nelson and Mullins, USA. Don Tapscott, the co-founder and executive chairman of the Blockchain Research Institute. And last but not least, Manuel A. González-Sanz, the former Foreign Affairs Minister of Costa Rica and the World Business Angels Forum High Commissioner to Costa Rica. A big thank you to everybody for being here as keynote speakers. After this, our new country manager for the USA office, Ingrid Vassiliou-Feltes, will speak about the strategic plan and will moderate a global keynote speaker session on a global panel on angel investment. In the meantime, we'll also have a global press conference as well, where journalists will be able to ask all questions to our panelists and about the way forward. So, without further ado, I'd like to immediately launch into our keynote speakers, and I'd like to introduce, first of all, Mr. Baybars Altuntas, the Executive Chairman of the World Business Angels Investment Forum. Baybars needs no introduction, but I will still make one for him, for those of you unfamiliar with our organization. Baybars is a global entrepreneur, a best-selling author, an angel investor, columnist, star of a Turkish version of the television show Dragon's Den, and founder of Jewelcom International. Known worldwide for his business prowess, he has served on many entrepreneurial boards empowering new leaders, notably as senior advisor of a London Stock Exchange Group for the Elite Program. He has also served as the World Entrepreneurship Forum's ambassador to Turkey and the Balkan countries. In 2014 and 15, he was named Best Individual in Europe, globally engaging with the world entrepreneurial ecosystem. And finally, and importantly for us, he has served as a JCI ambassador since 2015, acting as a bridge between enterprising young leaders and the angel investor network, and showing that entrepreneurship can also be used as a way of life. The theme of his keynote today will be from invention to innovation to digital transformation in a hyper-connected business environment. So, Executive Chairman Baybars, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Kevin. And I want to welcome all guests and also Minister González-Sanz, Congressman Moran. I see he has just joined. Dear Gerard Daché, President Itai Manyere, Dr. Daché, rector of the WBAF Business School, and dear Dr. Vasilio Veltes, country director of the US office, and Fadi Saab, president of the Ethical Governance Committee. But by the way, among the participants, I see the Minister of Entrepreneurship of Albania, who is joining. I think it will be good to invite him here, and he also joins us if he doesn't mind. Minister Shalsi, Eduard Shalsi, let me invite him before starting my speech. Yeah, I have just invited. So, oh, I invited wrong person, sorry. Sorry, Dr. Bashkar, I have to remove you. I'm trying to bring Minister Shalsi, if I can manage. Just a second, please. I think I managed, yeah. Okay. Invention was very important in 1950s, 60s, but today innovation is very important. Why? Because 40 years ago, 50 years ago, consumer was ready to consume anything invented. You didn't need a set of skills to turn your invention to innovation. You were inventing, customer was buying. That was the case 50 years ago. But that's not the case today. Today, you need a set of skills of entrepreneurship to convert, to turn your invention to innovation. Why? Because almost everything invented, and customer is very selective. So it is not enough you are just a very intelligent guy capable of inventing something to create a global success story for your economy. That's not enough. You also need entrepreneurial skills or an entrepreneur partner. But entrepreneurs of today have a great challenge. Access to finance is a challenge for them. They have great business ideas, they have great business models, business plans, but unfortunately, finance available for them is a little bit difficult to catch. As a matter of fact, finance available for entrepreneurs today, I mean, there are many opportunities from ICO to IPO. We have crowdfunding, wealth management institutions, VCs, angel investors, co-investment funds, government grants, banks, family offices, co-investment funds. We have many instruments available for entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurs of today need more than finance. This is the main challenge because there are many competitors in the market. So one of them is very interesting. Angel investors. They are very interesting because they are the only source. Hello, Minister Shalsi. They are the only source of putting the source of finance in addition to their know-how, mentorship, and networking. This is what we are naming as smart finance. And smart finance is creating a competitive advantage for entrepreneurs, startups, scale-ups, even for high growth businesses. But easing access to finance and easing access to smart finance is also a very important social responsibility, I think, for all governments and for all NGOs, because it is not so easy to access to smart finance. I think today we are talking about the importance of innovation, but we also have to start talking about the importance of digital transformation and business transformation in addition to importance of innovation. Governments of today, of course, are very intelligent. They are supporting innovation more than invention. It is very understandable because innovation creates new jobs, new wealth, social justice, and new tax for governments. Invention alone doesn't create these things. So, but these were very, very important and maybe the only important things before the kind visit of Mr. COVID to our world. After Mr. COVID's travel, I think now we also have to give equal importance to business transformation and digital transformation, because Mr. COVID changed the rules of the game. This is what we believe. So WBAF, World Business Angels Investment Forum, is one of the few affiliated partners of the G20, and we are in the Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion, GPFI committee of G20. And this committee is chaired by Queen Maxima of the Netherlands. And we are advocating in cooperation with GPFI the importance of increasing financial inclusion. But I personally brought the importance of digital inclusion, and I think it is more important than financial inclusion today. And this is what I have reported to GPFI committee in our June meeting. Because if we are going to increase the financial inclusion, then first we have to increase the digital inclusion. Until now, we didn't understand the importance of digital inclusion so much, I think, because Mr. COVID created this awareness. And we understood that there are millions, billions of people in the world who have no access to internet, who have no access to computer. And we have to deliver education online. We have to deliver some health services online. And if there is no internet, how these people, these millions of people are going to benefit from them? WBAF has three main missions. First, easing access to finance for entrepreneurs. Second, increasing financial inclusion. Third, promoting gender equality. So I think opening a country office in Washington, D.C. in the United States is going to really empower the spread of this mission in North America and even in Latin America. So I am thanking so much to Minister González-Sanz, because he will also highlight the impacts of this office for Central American economies. And I'm thanking so much to Congressman Moran for giving us an opportunity to have his insights and comments about entrepreneurship and angel investments. And I think my special thanks should go to dear Dr. Vasiliu Feltes, who is the architect, as a matter of fact, of this office. And my other special thanks go to dear Gerard Daché, Executive Director of the Global Government Blockchain Association, GBA. And I think this collaboration, WBAF and GBA collaboration, will be a good response to COVID-19, because blockchain, I think, will be one of the keywords of the post-pandemic business environment. And I think entrepreneurs, SMEs, startups will start to engage more with blockchain industry as a must of the new business environment. So JCI, Junior Chamber International, with its 200,000 members worldwide, is, I think, I have to thank to Itai Manyere for his global leadership, because I was recognized as the 8th global ambassador of JCI after UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. And I think Kevin is now working with Ban Ki-moon too. He is board member of Ban Ki-moon Center in Vienna. So I am congratulating you for your efforts to empower the youth entrepreneurship through these efforts. So I'm again thanking so much Dr. Daché for his leadership at the WBA Business School, because World Business Angels Investment Forum's Business School will have a great responsibility in this new era, because we cannot reach our goals without education. Money is not enough. Smart money is not enough. Education is a must. If we train new generations, if we train investors, if we train corporate guys in terms of the goals they are aiming in their life to empower their economies, I think education will play a critical role. And I'm also thanking so much to Fadi Saab, the chairman of the Ethical Governance, Standards of Excellence and Quality Leadership Committee. I'm very happy to see that the 3rd president of Croatia, Republic of Croatia, has become now the board member of the committee. I'm congratulating you, dear Fadi. And we have a guest now. He is not a speaker, but dear Minister Shalsi, the entrepreneurship minister of Albania, Republic of Albania, from Tirana. Welcome. And I am leaving the stage to you, Kevin, to proceed the program. Thank you very much for joining again. I'm sure everybody will find WBAF USA Country Office a rewarding experience in their actions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Executive Chairman Baybars, for this inspiring speech and for driving us continuously towards in a whole new direction, and for your visionary leadership. The next speaker I'd like to introduce is Mr. Gerard Daché, the Executive Director of the Government Blockchain Association in the USA. Mr. Daché has over 30 years of experience with quality, reliability, metrics-based process improvement, and blockchain. In 2017, he founded the Government Blockchain Association, GBA, and he has established over 90 government blockchain chapters around the world, establishing approximately 50 working groups. GBA working groups cover a wide range of topics. He has developed blockchain training materials that cover most of the established blockchain protocols, platforms, and products. He has delivered public addresses to the United Nations and delivered keynote addresses to audiences of hundreds of blockchain professionals around the world. He has advised national government cabinet officials, as well as state and local leaders. Mr. Daché is also leading a project designed to use a utility token to transition elements of a GBA into a decentralized autonomous organization. The project has been featured in Forbes magazine and other industry publications. So I now leave the floor to you, Mr. Daché, for your opening remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I hope I can live up to that kind introduction. So it even kind of impresses me. So that's great. I want to thank all of the folks involved. The names are too numerous to mention for this opportunity. And I really want to take this opportunity since we're launching the U.S. Office of this organization, I think we're gonna hear a lot of people talk about innovation and looking forward, and but sometimes I think it's very important to look backwards. And what I'd like to do is talk about the founding of the very first Washington office, which was done by George Washington back in the early 1700s. Because in looking at his life and looking at some of the things he's done, I think that there's great lessons that we can take, for investors and leaders in the future. So I'm going to just tell just a couple quick little stories, and I've got my timer turned on so I don't go too long. So I want to talk about George Washington as a young man, first of all. So his dream was to be a military man. He was not in the military. His brother was the adjutant general of Virginia, and all he ever did was shine his brother's boots, and he pressed his brother's uniform, right? But he had a dream to be in the military. And so during the French and Indian War, George Washington's background was a map maker. He was a surveyor, so he understood land navigation, right? So they needed to move basically from the Northern Virginia area to what is now the area near Pittsburgh. And they needed somebody to guide them, essentially, to be their map person. So they asked George Washington. They gave him an honorary commission as colonel, and he went with General Braddock to what was Fort Duquesne. Along the way, they hit an ambush, right, in Monongahela, Pennsylvania, and the French and the Indians surrounded them on three sides, and they were British. They were British Americans. They went right into this kill zone, and the fire and hail came at them from every direction, and it was a complete disaster. General Braddock was killed. The troops were being killed. George Washington was now the commander because he had an honorary commission. He had no idea what to do. So he rode into the battle, and I want you to imagine this, right? The bullets flying from every direction. He had no military experience. All he did was he would pick up the wounded soldiers, put them on his horse, and take them out to safety, and then go back in. And during the entire battle, that's all he did, right? So it was a complete defeat. They're marching back to Northern Virginia, and the men start to tell the stories and about how brave he was and how he cared about the men. And they started to tell poems and sing songs, so that his reputation grew bigger than the man. Well, many years later, when the tensions grew between the Americans and the British, the North wanted to secede, the South didn't. And the South said, listen, we're not going to join this unless you put a Southerner in command of the army. Well, there had been no battles in the South. The only Southern person was George Washington, with literally no military experience. And so the only way to accomplish this politically was to put him in charge. So he went from essentially having no experience other than that total defeat to being commander of the entire, what is now the U.S. Army, right? And it went terribly. The United States military was underfunded. This is like a lot of startups, right? They had no resources. They were working totally on sweat equity. And it was now 1776, the Battle of Trent. Here's the situation that this young startup country had. It was Christmas Eve. The next day, all of the enlistments were going to end, right? Washington was going to lose his army. They had no food. They had no supplies. Most of the men didn't have any shoes. The snow was covered in blood from when the troops would move because they didn't have adequate covering. And across the river was a Hessian military. The British had hired Germans to fight them, and all was about to be lost the next day. So Washington essentially tried a bold move. He said, look, we're going to go across the river. He said, but here's the complications. He didn't have very many boats, so he'd have to ferry his troops across, and he'd have half of his soldiers on one bank, half on the other, and a few exposed. It was a full moon. So if the Hessians woke up, it would be over. It was further complicated by the ice. The condition of the river was unknown. But sometimes you don't have a whole lot of options. So Washington went ahead with it. A fog, a lot of people say this was divine intervention. A fog kind of came in and covered their movement. In the morning, they attacked. They defeated the Hessians, and it turned the tide. The morale completely went up in the army. The French decided to join the war on the side of the Americans. Supplies and enlistments came flowing into Washington's camp, and it completely turned the tide for the American story, for the American startup. years later, after Washington became president, he traveled to Ohio to negotiate a treaty with the Indians. And he met the Indian chief that was there at the Battle of Monongahela. And the Indian chief said to him, I traveled many moons to come to meet with you today. He said, I personally fired at you 7 times during that battle. You had 2 horses shot out from underneath you, and your coat was completely tattered by musket fire. He said, and then I told the other braves not to stop shooting at you. And then he gave a prophecy, which had been recorded later. And the prophecy, and I don't remember the exact words, but it was something like, I knew that you were the great spirit. You were the brave that the great spirit would never let die in battle, and one day you would lead the great empire. And so as I think back about Washington and the founding of the United States and America, and I think about where we are today, there's a couple takeaways that I have, right? The first one is when it looks like all is lost, right? When we're facing global challenges, COVID, right? Civil unrest, all of these things that really would cause many people to hang their head and give up. That's when entrepreneurs have an opportunity to change the tide. And to change the tide, you got to be bold, right? J. Paul Getty once said, I learned too late in my life. Now, J. Paul Getty was a guy who was essentially behind the iron industry here in the United States. He was, when our banking system crashed, J. Paul Getty and a few others basically saved the American banking system. He was a man of incredible accomplishment. And he said, I learned too late in my life that it takes just about as much energy to do big things as small things. And if I had to do it all over again, I would spend more time doing big things and less time doing small things. And oftentimes, it's important for us to know that there are forces much greater than ourselves at work. Washington was a man of deep faith and relied on God. And I appreciate all the kind of things that you said about GBA. We are a global organization with about 15,000 people. We have about 120 chapters worldwide with about 50 working groups, and our people are doing incredible things. And I just want to let you know that GBA is proud to partner with the WBF to help tomorrow's leaders turn the tide on the world stage with bold solutions, with courage, integrity, and faith. And again, I want to thank you for this opportunity to be part of this incredible effort. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Daché, for this, and thanks for the support of GBA to WBAF. It's much appreciated. Moving forward, now it's time to move over to our keynote speakers. And first of all, I'd like to introduce my boss, Mr. Itai Manyere, the 2020 JCI president. So, based in Harare, Zimbabwe, Itai Manyere is a serial technopreneur with an interest in mobile value-added services, and he is the managing director of Blue Dot Technologies. In 2020, he serves as the 75th president of the Junior Chamber International, the world's foremost global network of enterprising young leaders, headquartered in St. Louis, Missouri. Since the start of the year, he has been traveling around the world to motivate and impact JCI members in 120 countries. In the first 7 weeks of the year, he traveled by plane, and since then has been zooming around the world from his living room and office in Zimbabwe, spearheading a new global initiative, JCI Rise, to address the psychological and economic effects of a global pandemic, notably to sustain and rebuild economies, motivate the workforce, and preserve mental health. All this in collaboration with partners such as the World Business Angels Investment Forum, the International Chamber of Commerce, the United Nations, the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens, and ISEC. So without further ado, I hand the floor to JCI President Itai Manyere. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kevin, my good friend, for the introduction. Greetings to everyone from Harare, Zimbabwe, where I have been for the past few months, thanks to COVID. Soon after, just I think around the same time that we left the World Congress in Istanbul, Turkey. Fantastic event that we had. It's an exciting time. Thank you, Baybars, for inviting me and collaborating with us. It's good to see Dr. Paul Donny. Good to see Fadi from Lebanon. I wouldn't do it justice, sir, if I don't wish you well at such a time that Beirut is facing what it's facing. And remember the conversations that we had earlier on in Turkey, I spoke to you and I said, I had a chance to visit Beirut. What a fantastic city. Had a chance to travel across the country, up in the hills, experience a bit of snow in Lebanon. And I believe that even beyond what you are going through at the moment, Lebanon will surely rise. And most importantly, just to congratulate Ingrid on a bold move that you have taken with the other members out in the US to establish WBAF chapter in the US. At a time when the whole world is faced with a crisis, and at a time when probably the best option is to sink our head in the sand and say, wow, we'll wait for the opportune time and the opportune circumstances to build. Only in the midst of crisis can such opportunities be presented. And what's an opportune time to give support and be the wind beneath the wings of young entrepreneurial, enterprising young people in the US and beyond, for them to be able to use their innovative stamina and be able to breathe life into economies that will never be the same beyond the crisis. And as I was preparing to come and speak to everyone today at this launch, I say to myself, the US over the years has never been one to say when they give birth to anything, it's only for themselves. But also in Africa, we say when you give birth to a son and you show them a way to walk, you have not done it only for your child, but you've also done it for the rest of the world. And we foresee the WBAF US office trailblazing. I see you partnering in a very exciting dimension of blockchain that shows that technology is going to be something that's very foremost if businesses need to be as relevant as possible, if governments need to be trailblazing post the crisis or post the Mr. COVID, as Baybars always calls it. And you are trailblazing in that space. It goes without saying that we as an organization in over 100 countries with close to 200,000 members across the world, we also say to ourselves, how best can we be relevant post the crisis? We said, we have responded to the crisis by providing PPE, by providing psychosocial support. But how best for us to breathe life to ensure that economies can be resilient post the crisis? How to give birth to new enterprises? How to help to have young people upskill so that even themselves can be relevant in the workforce, because things have changed thanks to COVID this year. But also, in the midst of all that, we've got something that's very, very important, which is our mental health. Stress is something that visits us anytime and every time. The lockdowns have not saved us any stress whilst at it. And as young people, we are going on with our campaign, which is the RISE initiative, to ensure that we can support each other, also support other young people and other enterprising young leaders across the world to ensure that they can be more vibrant than ever before. There is no opportune time than the now to establish this office. And I congratulate you, Ingrid, and the team on the ground in the US, and say we look forward to opportunities to collaborate. Our headquarters is in St. Louis, Missouri, and with so many members across the US, more than 15,000 members, and so many national organizations across the world. And we continue to look for opportunities for us to collaborate, and say, I wish you all the best on this landmark move of establishing this office. And to everyone that's connected, I will say, stay safe, stay healthy, continue being bold, and yes, let us get out of this crisis stronger than ever before. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you very much, President Itai, for your ever motivational remarks. And yes, indeed, I can just reiterate that JCI looks forward to enhancing collaboration with everybody from World Business Angels Forum moving forward in the future. Now, let's move on to our next speaker, who I would like to introduce. Mr. Jim Moran was a member of the United States House of Representatives, representing Virginia's 8th Congressional District from 1991 to 2015, where he was known for his bipartisan leadership and ability to resolve complex issues. He served on the Appropriations, Foreign Affairs, Banking, Housing and Finance, and Government Reform and Oversight Committees during his 12 terms in the US Congress. As a senior member of the House Appropriations Committee, he was chairman and ranking member of the Subcommittee on the Interior and Environment, a senior member on the Defense and Military Construction Subcommittees, a senior member on, Foreign Operations, Labor, Health and Human Services and ranking member of the DC and Legislative Branch Subcommittees. He also served as a member of the Steering and Policy Committee of the House Democratic Leadership. He currently serves as Senior Policy Advisor for Nelson and Mullins, representing clients in the areas of defense, government contracting, trade, foreign relations, economic development, renewable energy, technology, health, education, and finance, amongst others. So I'd like to now pass the floor to Congressman Moran for your remarks. Thank you very much. Excuse me, Congressman, I believe you're on mute.
We can't fix that. Okay, can you hear me now? Thank you very much, Mr. Hannon. It's a true honor to be included in this illustrious international group. I do appreciate Gerard Daché's comments about George Washington. He certainly was an inspiration for any person who strives to be a national leader in the public sector. He was heroic, but he should also be an inspiration for business people as well, because one of the things everyone doesn't know about it, but should be recognized, excuse me, is that when he was charged by the government to survey out in the West, he made it a point to buy up the very best land that he surveyed and keep it for himself. So that can be inspirational to business people who are also seeking to be entrepreneurs. I want to talk a bit about blockchain technology, and my throat is a little here. I trust that's not COVID, but I'm distanced from you all anyway. I want to offer a few words of warning, if you would, as well as encouragement from innovative technologies like blockchain, and particularly blockchain, because blockchain technology is as disruptive as it is transformative. And because of that, we should expect a great deal of resistance to it. And the more successes in terms of accountability and transparency and efficiency that it achieves, the more resistance will come from those whose wealth and livelihoods are dependent upon remaining exactly the same. Because there are a lot of people and institutions, as you know, throughout the world, who count on us using the same processes over and over again. And when you innovate, when you experiment, when you want to do things differently, that's actually threatening to the comfort of people who are afraid that if things do change, that it will undermine their current value. That's the case with individuals as well as large organizations. They're threatened by change. But just as the disruption that's caused by sustainable energy from the sun and the wind and the water or by autonomous vehicles, or by artificial intelligence, there will be some who grasp the potential of blockchain technology. They will invest in it, and they will allow it to demonstrate its full potential. Now, the Government Blockchain Association that Gerard Daché started and runs and has enabled to grow, that is likely going to transform in many ways the way that the public sector serves the interests of the public. And in the same way, I would expect that there will be some of you and many people throughout the world who will seize on the opportunities inherent within blockchain and begin to transform the way that the private sector functions. Because just as with the human body, if we are not growing, we're dying. There is no static state in nature, nor should there be in our economies, nor in our societies. We were meant to spend our lives adapting to change. That's how we become stronger, more resilient, of greater value to the people around us. And so I want to congratulate all of you who are involved in growing our economies and improving our societies and pushing the boundaries of what we are capable of achieving individually and collectively. And I think that's why we are gathered today, to better understand what we can do to make this a better, more productive, safer, peaceful, and more sustainable world. So I thank you because by virtue of the fact that you're engaged in this call, you get it. But I think you're all going to have to be the pioneers to find new ways to achieve better lives for more people. So with that, let me conclude and thank you again for including me today. I was honored.
Thank you very much, Congressman Moran, for these your great support and encourage indeed. Blockchain is something which is one of the key topics of the WBAF USA office, and this transitions smoothly to our next speaker, who is Mr. Don Tapscott, the co-founder and executive chairman of the Blockchain Research Institute. So Mr. Tapscott is one of the world's leading authorities on the impact of technology on business and society. He's authored 16 books, including Wikinomics, How Mass Collaboration Changes Everything, which has been translated into over 25 languages. And in 2016, he also wrote The Blockchain Revolution, How the Technology Behind Bitcoin and Other Cryptocurrencies is Changing the World. In 2017, Mr. Tapscott and his son, Alex, founded the Blockchain Research Institute, whose 80+ projects are the definitive investigation into blockchain strategy, use cases, implementation challenges, and organizational transformations. Mr. Tapscott is a member of the Order of Canada and is ranked the second most influential management thinker and the top digital thinker in the world by Thinkers 50. He is an adjunct professor at INSEAD and former two-term chancellor of Trent University in Ontario. So with this, I hand the floor to you for your remarks. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks very much, Kevin. And I just have 10 minutes here, so I'll get right to it. I don't think there's ever been a more interesting time to be an angel investor. And there's probably never been a more important time. And I would like to make the case to you that there's never been a bigger opportunity than what's happening right now. And power corrupts, and PowerPoint corrupts absolutely. But I would like to just pull up a couple of slides, if I could, to kind of make some points here. So just give me a second if I can get a Zoom working. Here we go. So there we go. So and I assume that you have something on the screen here. If not, someone should tell me. I'm up here at my lake house. I've been here for north of Toronto 6 months right now, and with my extended family. So we have 3 little babies and some nannies and stuff, and we've been squirreled away. And I hope that you're all well and that you're all safe. I think that the pandemic is really represents a turning point in human history. That the economic costs are staggering. The human costs are unfathomable at this stage. We still don't know. And but this is one of those rare moments when the weaknesses in our institutions are sort of brought to the fore with searing clarity for everybody. And there are many leaders that have failed and will be replaced. Many institutions are being scrutinized, and our systems are being scrutinized as well. And the pandemic coincides with a very profound change in the digital age, which is the rise of a second era of digital. And just a humbling story here. I wrote a couple of books in the 1980s that nobody read. I think my mother bought most of the copies. But I started writing my first bestsellers in the early 90s. And the book Paradigm Shift, which was obviously a big book. And then in 94, I wrote The Digital Economy, which was the first bestseller about the web. And 20 years later, I was asked to write the 20th anniversary edition of that book, and I had to think about what had occurred. And the book held up pretty well. But I came to the conclusion that we're really entering a second era of the digital age. We've had this first era for 40 years of mainframes, mini computers, PCs, the internet, the web, social media, the mobile web, the cloud, big data. And now technology is infusing itself into everything, into the physical world with billions and trillions of inert objects that are smart communicating devices. Into our bodies. We have technology, AI, machine learning that can do things that it wasn't programmed to do. And I came to the surprising conclusion that the foundational technology for all of that was in fact the underlying technology of cryptocurrencies or blockchain. And what blockchain represents to me is not some interesting new technology. It's really the second era of the internet. For 40 years, we've had an internet of information. Now we're getting an internet of value, where anything of value from money, securities, intellectual property, the data in our identities, even cultural assets like art and music or votes. A vote is an asset, something of value that belongs to somebody, can be managed, stored, transacted in a secure and private way. And trust is not achieved by an intermediary. It's achieved by cryptography, collaboration, and some clever code. Now, it turns out that this technology is quite critical in helping us fight pandemics. And we've done a whole bunch of work about that. But from the point of view of an angel investor, this is an historic opportunity. This is 1994, and Amazon has not yet been incorporated. eBay was just incorporated. Microsoft is trying to figure out what all this means, and Bill Gates is writing about the information superhighway. But this is the early days of a very profound change. And if Silicon Valley was the center of the first era of the digital age, where's the second era going to be centered? Well, it won't just be one location. And there are many ecosystems around the world. But these are the kinds of things that we look at the Blockchain Research Institute. Do you have a country and a culture and a region that has a culture of innovation? Do governments get it and support this? Now, a good example of that is the government of China. Last time I was there, which was a while ago, I was introduced by the vice chairman of the Communist Party, and he read greetings from Xi Jinping, the president. And he said that there are two dominant technologies taking us forward for an innovation economy in China, blockchain and AI. There are very few leaders in the world that get that. Now, there's a whole dark side to all of that, which I don't have time to go into today, but that's a big deal. You need a big domestic market, or that's helpful. Regulatory clarity. I mean, the senator, I thought, was quite profound in talking about how this is a massive disruption, and it's going to take some time. You think about a supply chain. This is a $50 trillion industry that we're disrupting. Capital markets, this is a couple $100 trillion where we have institutions and laws and regulatory structures and processes that lock us into the old model. Do you have a regulatory environment that can break free from that? Are you building a big ecosystem? And this is all about ecosystems. You know, Fred Smith, the founder of FedEx, the CEO, and I interviewed him in front of a large audience in New York. It was like thousands of people, and he blew people away. He said, you know, we invented the chain of custody idea, and that we built a system, we stuck our logo on it, and that enabled us to build a successful company. We're going to do it again around blockchain. We'll know more than where the parcel is, we'll know what the parcel is and how the parcel is and what temperature it's at and so on. He says, but we can't do it the old way. We need to change the entire industry. Think about logistics, he says. That's where we're starting. What's a bill of lading? What is that? What's an invoice? We need standards. So they're working together with the entire ecosystem and their partners to bring about that change. You need the banks to wake up. Some banks in the world are fighting this. Everywhere in the world, some banks are fighting this. It's important to have thought leadership. You need to have funding for entrepreneurship. And this is where angels come in. Beyond token generation events, which are this historic new way of raising money, which will be very disruptive, already is. There was a token generation event a couple of years ago for over $1 billion for a company. There was no investment bank, no stock market, and no stock. They're purchasing tokens that represent a security share in the company. You need talent, universities that not just have good computer science, but that are putting out people who can be creative and entrepreneurs and build businesses. And you need to have the corporate environment embrace this kind of innovation as well, rather than fight it. Now, I live in Canada, and I'm very proud to say that Canada and North America, for that matter, are very strong in these areas. I don't think that Silicon Valley will be the center, certainly won't be the only center. And if you look in the United States, there are very strong ecosystems developing in other regions, and New York is a big one. Normally, I'm living in Toronto, where there's a huge ecosystem, and we're very strong in Toronto on all of these different things. So whatever country you're in, you have an historic role to bring about the leadership to kind of make this happen. Because if this is true, what I'm saying, this is going to change entire industries, unlike the Internet of Information could never do. We're leading to profound changes in the deep architecture and structure of the corporation and how we orchestrate capability in society to innovate, to create goods and services, to engage with the rest of the world. And this does represent a new paradigm, if I can use that word. And a paradigm is a mental model. It puts boundaries around what we think they constrain our actions. And they're often so strong that the assumptions are so strong that we don't even know that they're there. You know, the earth is at the center of the universe. That was a dominant paradigm for millennia. The big problem in the world is communism. Remember that one? The purpose of computing is to automate existing business processes with the goal of reducing headcount. That was 3 decades. The internet is about information, not about value. That's the dominant paradigm that we've had for decades. And something can come along in art, science, culture, technology, whatever, that causes a change to occur. And when that happens, you get a leadership crisis. Vested interests fight against change, and leaders of old paradigms have great difficulty embracing the new. What is your role as an angel in bringing about the leadership to succeed? I'll just close by saying a word about what we're trying to do. The Blockchain Research Institute is the largest think tank. We have 110 projects that we've done or are doing. And each of these produces multiple deliverables, reports, and other stuff like that, hundreds of deliverables. It's funded by 100 companies and governments from around the world. And they contribute a significant number of funds each. And our goal is to bridge this potential with the actual deployment. And this is going to take a while because the Internet of Information, like Fred Smith said, you just build a system, you create a website, stick your logo on it, and there you go. With this technology, we're bringing about very profound changes. And that's our role, is to sort of make that happen. Can you be a leader for this change? Well, leadership can come from anywhere. That's what we've learned. And the community of people who invest in this future are the ones who will make it a bright one. You know, I'm of the view that the future is not something to be predicted. It's something to be achieved. And I think together, and I'm an angel investor as well, we can build, you know, a very positive future. Maybe this more decentralized, smaller world that our kids inherit might actually be a better one. And this age of networked intelligence could be an age where the promise of digital is finally fulfilled. So thanks very much, and thanks for inviting me to this terrific event.
Oh, thank you very much for your great presentation, Don. And yes, we look forward to moving forward. Before we move on to our next speaker, I just want to announce some statistics about the audience we have. Right now, we have had 375 participants today from 82 countries, and we currently have 157 people watching at this moment, which is a great achievement. Very good to see so many audience members from around the world engaging with the World Business Angels Investment Forum again. So it's testimony to the hard work of all those working behind the scenes to be able to create such a big audience. Now, I'd like to move on to our next speaker, who is His Excellency Minister Manuel González-Sanz. Mr. Manuel González-Sanz was the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Costa Rica from 2014 to 2018. He led, managed, defined, and executed Costa Rica's foreign affairs policies and established a new way of promoting foreign relations, moving from traditional geopolitical approaches to effective linkages with strategic partners. He defined multilateral action as a platform for the promotion of the fundamental pillars of Costa Rican foreign policy and enabled his country's offices abroad to act as commercial and tourism promotion and investment attraction agencies. His interest in exploring new geopolitical spaces and identifying potential strategic partners allowed the country to move quickly to foster relations with countries in the moderate Arab world, Central Asia, and Africa, as well as with the countries of the Asia-Pacific region. Prior to this, he served as Minister of Foreign Trade from 2004 to 2006, and as ambassador to the United Nations and its specialized organizations in Geneva, Switzerland. He is a graduate of Columbia University Law School, New York, the University of Costa Rica Law School, and the National University of San Diego, Costa Rica. He is also the WBAF High Commissioner for Costa Rica, and I now pass the floor to Minister Sanz. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. Hello, everybody. All of you from Rica. Allow me to give a special thanks to our executive chairman, Mr. Baybars Altuntas. We currently live in an environment that is at least tense, confusing, and uncertain. In recent months, we often feel there is little to celebrate and much to worry about. Good news are rare and frequently unnoticed nowadays. Today, we celebrate the occasion that changes those feelings. And we have reasons to be enthusiastic and, we hope, high. I'm glad and honored to participate in this ceremony. Let me congratulate, full of positive energy and good wishes, the opening of the first country office of WBAF in the United States of America. And by recognizing the hard work and vision of those who made it possible. What a special event. And my particular wishes for great success to Madame Basilio Feltes as country director. The existence of this office in DC also fills the Central American region with hope, and especially for my own country, Costa Rica. Silicon Valley was mentioned before. Maybe we are on the road to become a Silicon Valley of Latin America. And I hope that some of the data that I will share with you will also leave that impression in you. Our open economy, closely linked to that of the United States, which is the main source of foreign direct investment, tourism, imports, and exports, is an obvious reason why we should pay close attention to the opening of this office in Washington, D.C. On the verge of celebrating 200 years of independence next year, we are linked to the United States by a long history that has resulted in progress and human and economic development, and still has plenty of potential. The doors of this DC office can open to our region are difficult to define at this time, but not because of its absence, but rather because the enormous amount of opportunities it can open to joint work and projects of common benefit. Let me briefly share an example that could serve to find and materialize those opportunities. Let me talk about my own country, Costa Rica. We have no army since 1948, more than 70 years ago. We have enjoyed free and mandatory education since 1870. We are the longest democracy in Latin America. We spend 7.6% of GDP on education and 9.9% of GDP in health. 99% of electricity comes from renewable sources. Half of our territory is under some sort of environmental protection. With only 51,000 square kilometers, Costa Rica is home to 6% of the world's biodiversity. It's a global leader in sustainable tourism and development. We are the first exporter of carbon neutral coffee in the world and golden pineapples. We have 15 free trade agreements in place, including DR-CAFTA, or Dominican Republic Central American Free Trade Agreement with the United States, an FTA with China, with the European Union, with Korea, with Singapore, with Mexico, with Central American countries, with the CARICOM countries, with Panama, with Peru, with Colombia, with Chile. We are an open economy that has access, literally, to 2/3 of the world's GDP. We currently export more than 4,300 different products to 150 countries in the world. Life sciences products is #1 sector of exports in Costa Rica. And 1/3 of our population is between 15 and 34 years. In Latin America, we rank #1 in many segments, like human capital in regards to current and future skills of the workforce. #1 per capita exporter of knowledge-intensive and IT services. #1 in innovation efficiency, English proficiency, quality of research institutions, digital skills of population, ease of finding young workforce skilled employees. More than 300 high-tech companies have established successfully in Costa Rica. 29 of the Fortune 100 are placed in Costa Rica. 16 of the top 100 tech companies in the world have presence in our country. We have created a cluster of med tech companies of more than 80 companies doing business here in our country. In several occasions, our investment promotion agency has been ranked #1 in the world. We have a privileged location, ideal for reaching to the Americas and the rest of the world. In summary, as I described this example, and as you open the first country office of the United States of America, please keep in mind that our region is open for business, for mutual cooperation, for development, for sharing opportunities and working together. I wish you all prosperity and health. Keep safe and sound. Come and visit us and see with your own eyes what we have to offer. And hope that very soon we'll be having a similar ceremony to celebrate the opening of WBAF's first country office in Costa Rica for the Central American region. Have a wonderful day. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Minister Sanz, for this really enlightening speech. And it's great to learn about Costa Rica and all the potential that the country has. So before moving forward to the presentation by Country Director Ingrid, I'd like to just introduce one of the special guests who joined us on this panel, because we have on this on the call right now Minister Edward Chelsea, who is the Minister of State for Entrepreneurship Protection of the Republic of Albania. He's also a board member of the Diplomacy and Action for Entrepreneurs Group of the World Business Angels Forum, and also the president of the Albanian Chess Federation. So, Minister Chelsea, I don't know if you want to say a few words to us as well to address the audience on this topic.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. It was with great pleasure in these tough times to listen and to communicate with some great voices. Just a few words. I was not prepared to have a speech, but in these tough times, we all are fighting to better understand the situation. Like never before, you know, doctors are more confused, and this Mr. COVID, as Mr. Altuntas named it, you know, shocked us, brought some confusions, but it could be a very great opportunity to open a new chapter in the history of the world. And as never before, there is so much energy as it's shown to fight the virus. And I was just reading in the morning some articles that the science is fighting as never before and has shortened the periods of finding the vaccine. While in Albania, as a matter of fact, last year in October, we took a decision to go with all the services online. And as a matter of fact, it was a decision taken very quickly, as some of the newspapers were telling us that, did you guys knew something before all the others about this COVID issue? Otherwise, how would you come up with such a drastic decision on having all services for citizens and the businesses online? And as a matter of fact, from the 1st January of this year, we've started many of the services online, and we just reviewing the systems. Albania is a small country, almost 3 million inhabitants, but trying to fight with our own way this pandemic. I'm a minister for the protection of the enterprise, as a matter of fact, Baybars, not minister for the enterprise, which is something unusual for a lot of countries. You never hear minister for protection of the enterprise. But as a matter of fact, Albania is undergoing huge reforms, different sectors, education, energy. We had reform on the territorial reform. We went from almost 400 communes and municipalities to 60. But above all, we going through very tough times fighting for a new justice system. And we decided some years ago, with the help of our partners, European Union and also United States, to build a new justice system. Like, I would say, I haven't come across any other example in the world when a government took the decision to knock down the judicial system and start building a new one from the beginning. And we, in this very challenging times for Albania, we thought that it could be better to have a minister for the protection of the enterprise. It sounds a bit paradoxical, because I'm also questioning by different partners that, who are you, minister, protecting the business from? And I say, we protect the business from ourselves. You know, I have one leg in the private sector, one in the government. But as a matter of fact, I deal with the complaints of the businesses. So what we practically do is that we try to bring and to close the gap between government different governmental institutions and the business. And, you know, trying to improve the government, but trying to improve also and to build up more efficient bridges between the government and the businesses. Although we're speaking Albanian, sometimes it seems like between us, sometimes it seems like we're speaking different languages, you know. By improving the communication, we also try to better understand the problems of the businesses, whether they are judicial, whether they are, it is an institutional problem, it has to do, why not, with the corruption, it's a lack of will, lack of capability to better understand the business. So we try also to solve individual problems, individual business problems, as well as suggesting the redesigning of the sectors, agencies of governmental institutions. It's very important in this time to see that, you know, what can businesses offer to the government. And I'm very glad, and I thank Baybars for the invitation in Istanbul, which broaden our horizons and also connections in a sector which we were not, let's say, very familiar with or very well equipped with knowledges. We now, I can say, we have a draft law on startups in Albania. We broadly discussing it with factors in Albania, but also outside the country. It was not within my duties and responsibilities, but it was a demand from the startup community to have a law, a legal framework, and to draft together policies which could help. We're strong believer of startups, scales up, and all this ecosystem, and we are very determined to move forward. And as a matter of fact, the forum also helped us to create some very good connections with different countries. I don't want to take much of your time, but in this challenging times, there is a huge opportunity to better connect with each other and to better understand that this Mr. COVID probably are bringing us more closer and better understanding that the challenges are global and we have to better communicate with each other. Unless we face this global challenge together, we're not going to go very, very, very far. One more time, thank you for the invitation. I appreciate. Congratulations for the country office in United States, and hope that we're going to be stronger once Mr. COVID will be defeated. Thank you very much, Kevin.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Minister, or should I say Faleminderit. Yes, for these really inspirational words, and good to hear about how Albania has been rising to the occasion after the pandemic as well. So now I'd like to, it's time to hear more concretely about what the new WBAF Country Office has lined up. So who better to speak about it than the new country director for this office, and also the WBAF Senator for the United States of America. I'd like to introduce Dr. Ingrid Vasilio-Feltes. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not Senator of the United States of America. I'm only Senator of WBAF. One quick correction.
That's what I meant. Sorry.
Okay, well,
Maybe
thank you again. Thank you again to all our speakers for their support and valuable insights. It is a true honor for me to have the opportunity to open this office and provide leadership. I also want to thank WBF and GBA for the trust in me and for their unconditional support. What started just as an idea and a concept a few months ago is reality today. So it's a very big privilege for me to be here with all of you today and share some of the action plan that we put together. Before I start, maybe two quotes, because everybody mentioned what's going on with the pandemic. So a very wise man once said that in crisis there is opportunity, and I strongly believe in that. I've done that all my life. I think also another wise man said that if we want to take control of the future, we must create it. So I think with this office, we're doing our best to try to embrace the changes that we are currently observing throughout the world. And I think through this office, our wonderful mission and vision will hopefully contribute to a quick recovery post-pandemic. So I'm gonna start sharing a few of our action plans. Please let me know if you can see the slides. Everything good, Kevin? Okay. So again, our vision and mission is for the office to fulfill the global vision and mission of optimizing access to finance for businesses and generate more jobs, and of course, foster social justice worldwide. Our framework is to interact and engage with a wide variety of institutions, including public, private, local, international, commercial, academic institutions, to ensure economic development and help shape the global agenda. With this partnership that we created, the opportunity is for us to partner with all the chapters that GBA has worldwide. And we're very proud to participate in all their activities that cultivate the professional workflow between technologists, public policy makers, and we're gonna hopefully promote the emerging digital technologies that we all believe in so much. Our role is to collaborate with leaders within the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and our office will work towards facilitating economic growth, as well as pave the way towards optimizing digital fluency and financial inclusion by stimulating adoption of technology. We identified 4 action pillars: governance, education and knowledge sharing, mentorship, consulting and coaching. And of course, we want to foster entrepreneurship. So we have a whole range of activities that will be the foundation for that pillar. Of course, our immediate goal is to establish a solid office governance. We have a series of activities planned that fall in the education and knowledge sharing domain. We, of course, plan to offer our WBF Business School courses. We also aim to publish a few white papers and an e-journal. And if everything goes well, we also hopefully within the next year launch a national online media platform to promote angel investment. Like we've done over the past few months with all our WBF and GBA chapters, we of course will continue to organize summits, forum, roundtables, and webinars for our members. This is one pillar that's really near and dear to my heart: mentorship, consulting, and coaching. Our roundtable later is going to also focus on the importance of this. And I'm looking forward to offer the WBF Qualified Business Angel Investor courses. We're also proud to offer the WBF Global Business Mentorship Program. And of course, as appropriate for all the startups and scale-ups, we can offer consultation whenever it's needed. And as everybody knows, or for those of you that might not be yet aware, we can also assist businesses that wish to participate in the GFR stage. So the other pillar that we wanted to highlight is entrepreneurship and innovation. And all of our speakers highlighted that important aspect of innovation. I happen to believe on a personal level that what we're doing today will help us expedite our entry into the fifth industrial revolution, and blockchain is one of the technologies that can probably accelerate that process. So we aim to organize a series of events like innovation competitions, incubator workshops and programs, accelerator workshops and programs, hackathons, thinkathons, as well as the national championship, and hopefully also, if we can pull it off this year, the Excellence Awards. The reason why we're hesitant is because of the travel restrictions, or we might be able to offer them virtually, but that's on the wish list. And then last but not least, we of course have a series of activities that are aiming to promote digital and financial inclusion. We will organize investor delegations. We will hopefully work very hard in partnership between our organizations to create economic development commissions, hopefully. And then also design and launch a startup exchange market. That's my big wish list. Of course, not everything can be accomplished right away, but at least it gives you a broad agenda of our strategic plan. And just to give you a little flavor of some upcoming events, we're planning a FinTech innovation competition. Due to the travel restrictions, we've been hesitant to finalize the date. And of course, in partnership with GBA, there are several events where we're gonna partner to offer all the initiatives we discussed to startups and scale-ups that wish to engage with us. These are the concrete action plans for the foreseeable year. In the further future, the longer range plans will include hopefully opening new additional offices within the United States. The top 3 cities that are on our radar and where we started conversations are New York, San Francisco, and Miami. And then of course, we're gonna continue to foster business digital transformation, not only blockchain, but all other emerging technologies. There is tremendous interoperability and opportunity for all those to be integrated. And then my goal, as some of you know, we recently created a WBAF Research Institute. So in the future, maybe there is a possibility to work towards a global research consortium that focuses on digital transformation and angel investments and entrepreneurship, science, everything we talked about today, hopefully would be under that umbrella. And I know we are coming to a close. I just want to make sure that Kevin can take some questions if we have any questions. I really want to thank everybody again for the unconditional support that I've had over the last few months. And of course, our audience, we've had a very active chat throughout this time. And we are grateful for everybody taking the time. Please don't drop off. We have an amazing roundtable presentation right after coming up. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, Ingrid, for this, for all this great plan of action, and it's very exciting to see what's coming up right now for the future of the WBA office in the United States. Yes, and as Ingrid mentioned, it's now time to hold the press conference. I see that we have 46 journalists from 32 countries lined up. So if you have any questions, now's the time to for the journalists to ask questions. I believe in the chat or in the Q&A session, in the Q&A section. If any questions for Country Director Ingrid or for anybody else. Okay, yeah, I'll just give a few seconds if anybody has any questions. In the meantime, I'd like to say that if any journalists or anybody else has any questions about the WBAF USA office or any of the projects or the plan of action, moving forward, please feel free to contact either the WBAF Secretary General, Christina, or else contact Country Director Dr. Ingrid Vasiliou-Feltes directly for any questions.
Kevin, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, sure.
I'd like to ask Ingrid, what motivated her to launch the U.S. national chapter?
Oh, that's easy. That's an easy question. So I've always been an avid digital advocate and ethics advocate, as Paddy, our president of the ethics committee, knows. And over the last few years, I've been very much involved in blockchain and AI. And I truly believe that digital transformation is crucial for the next quarter century. Like I mentioned earlier, I think we will have a healthcare renaissance also triggered by this pandemic. And I happen to believe that blockchain technology, like all other emerging technologies, play a key role in that. And like I alluded before, I think also all these emerging technologies are the foundation or the catalyst for the new digital era that I will venture to say, I think we are already in the 5th industrial revolution. So that's what motivated me to partner with the GBA. And I saw tremendous opportunities to collaborate between all our chapters. Not only do we have a broad worldwide geographic footprint, but also the mission and vision is so aligned and synergistic that to me, it seemed like a wonderful idea. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for, it's good to hear the story behind all this, this initiative. We also received 2 questions about the startup exchange market. Can you maybe say a few brief words about what it is and how it is planning to proceed?
Well, we're in the incubator phase. We're planning it, so I'm gonna just give a few hints. It's a very important global initiative, and we're currently doing just a few pilot phases, but our goal is to, of course, create a global opportunity that, particularly in this globalized, highly virtualized environment, will offer startups a new access to investments that before was never possible. Baybars, you want to make any other remarks regarding that? Add anything to that?
As a matter of fact, this is the most important part of all the mission, because exit is very important for startups. If there is no exit, there is no investment. Angel investors invest in potential companies which are carrying a exit possibility in the future. So startup exchange sounds like stock exchange, and I think it is a great idea to develop this idea. And if every country in the world can achieve its own exit strategy, like Silicon Valley within the country, this means more foreign investors will invest in their countries. Cross-border investment will be more possible if a foreign investor sees a simple, clear, practical exit strategy within the market. Otherwise, there is a queue in front of Silicon Valley. It is really very difficult for startups to come to this queue from around the world. So startup exchange, I think, is a good idea to create an awareness about creating a local exit strategies for entrepreneurship ecosystems. It is very important.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman Baybars. And yes, I just saw there a couple of brief questions quickly before we end. There was a question about Thinker funds and also there was just one point: some do not want social change and equality. They may also oppose blockchain for that reason. What are your thoughts on this resistance? This will be the last question before we move on to the panel session. Thank you.
Sure, well, I'll take the resistance. I think we've noticed throughout centuries that there are always some within our society that resist change, but I think we have to persevere. And if I had to mention another quote, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one single step. So I think if we all make our contribution and do that one step, we only can succeed, but we have to be resilient and persistent. On the Thinkathon question, I think it's important not to just do hackathons and accelerator programs and incubator programs. You want to also stimulate new thinking. And I think with the disruption that we notice globally, I've been very enthusiastically participating in several Thinkathons, and I can only say that they are a way to stimulate creativity, stimulate change, and help us all embrace, hopefully, some of the challenges that lie ahead of us. Thank you.
Can I add one thing about the resistance?
Please.
So we had an opportunity to be in Cameroon not too long ago, and they were having a little challenge in Cameroon that there was a revolution going on. The Anglo-speaking separatists essentially were involved in a hot war with the Cameroonian government, and there were a lot of villages being burned and people being killed. And so they asked us to comment on a problem that they had, in that the rebels had launched an ICO to raise money for their revolution. So we were over there on that, but in those discussions, the president had just won re-election. I think he'd now been the president for 38 years, and every time they have a democratic election, he wins with overwhelming support, right? And so it's just amazing. He just wins every election. And she said to me, the ICT minister said, "We're interested in all of the blockchain applications except for voting. Our voting system works just the way we want it to," right? And so clearly they didn't have any interest in implementing blockchain with that. But there were many other cases that they did, and it reminds me of when Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. He didn't actually make his money on the invention of the light bulb. He made his money on the network of electric lines that strung all across the country, which eventually became General Electric, GE, right? And the gas companies at that time were opposed to him greatly because gas was being used for people to light their homes through kerosene. And so the ad campaign that they launched said, "Don't put electricity in your home. Electricity is just unbridled lightning. And if you put electricity in your home, your homes will burn down, your husbands will be electrocuted, and you will be a widowed, homeless widow." And so I tell you these two things for two reasons. Number one, we need to recognize that there are many organizations that will staunchly oppose this. They will lie about it. They'll do all sorts of things to protect their position. And the response to that should not be for us to go into the hardest places. I think what we do is we go into the places where there's not that opposition. It's a brand new technology. It's very immature. It's got lots of problems, right? But we go into the areas where we don't face that kind of opposition. We develop the maturity, we build the technology, we build the confidence in the technology, we overcome some of those barriers. And as we strengthen the technology and our maturity, we then start to move into those harder to reach areas, right? And so one of the things that I've been telling our community is focus on state and local, right? You know, it's easier to turn a canoe than it is a battleship or an aircraft carrier. And if you go to sort of these, what I would refer to lower tier places to prove out the technology and develop the capability and competency, you then develop the credibility to then move into the harder places. But, you know, national program managers that have billions of dollars, a system of billions of dollars, are not likely going to experiment on some unfounded technology. So I really believe that we do this from a bottoms up approach, starting in the low risk areas and not even trying to go into the place where there's hardened opposition. We'll get to them later.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gerard, for your remarks on this issue. Indeed, yeah, resistance to change is always something that needs to be overcome for innovators like we are, and also ethical business values are part of the issue as well. And this is something which is going to be covered in our upcoming roundtable. But before that, I'd like to leave the floor for some, before we conclude this first section on the launch of the US office, I'd like to leave the floor to the rector of the WBAF Business School, Dr. Paul Duany. Quick introduction, Dr. Paul Duany is also the former Group CEO of Turk Telecom, and he also joined recently as WBAF as the person in charge of the whole education process. So, Dr. Duany, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Kevin. Excellent moderation. You know, in the order of the speakers, I could just make a very, very brief contribution. It was very interesting to hear Gerard, for example, start with some associations with the US in relation to this office, and then to hear Jim and Don elaborate on blockchain and, you know, where that is going, and His Excellency Manuel in relation to the country that he's placed in and relating to per capita comparatives, which a lot of people are finding very difficult in the Mr. COVID times to understand where their countries are operating. And also His Excellency Edward in relation to Albania, again a small country which is trying to make things within the scale that they're in. And thanks very much also to Ingrid for all her contributions, and to all the people who have been working behind the scenes. I would caution at this point of our discussion in that it is true that, you know, there will always be resistance to change, but it's more likely for some types of technological change to be coming from a player in the market as opposed to an absolute, for example, startup, simply because it just takes one, you know, to believe in it. If you have a market of X players and one starts to, for example, digitize early, or, I mean, okay, I'll get to blockchain in 20 seconds, but, you know, it just takes one player in a market to lead, and then the others either, you know, fall out or lose out and so on. So that is one leg of it. The interesting thing about new money, angel investments, or all kind of new money, is that in this period, I believe the next 5 years, returns from conventional investing is going to be very, very depressed in terms of returns. Hence, the opportunity for investing in new things will become a way, but as Baybars Bey indicated, very importantly, these type of investments need to see some level of exit or a dividend yielding type return, meaning it has to pay some share of operating profit as opposed to building up hype. And as a closing, just at this point, is that just as there is resistance to change, again, there's a lot of hype. So when people speak about AI or blockchain, and all of a sudden somebody says, hey, my product is also, you know, blockchain, and we all know what that means. You end up with a lot of these people that actually then misrepresent what they have, and then people follow the hype. So it's a gradual thing. It works the way it works. The people who move fastest take the biggest risks. If they have some muscle behind them, which is either money or a customer base or government influence. And as a closing note, just on this, I was very impressed, for example, when, and I think it was Don that mentioned the Chinese, and it's generally public, that they said that they're going to put a lot of investments into blockchain. Follow that through, by the way, and find out exactly whether that is true or not, and you'll be very surprised with the answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, for this, for your remarks, and always very insightful. And yes, it's a good way to conclude this first part of the session. Now it's time. Please don't go away, because it's time for our round table, which where we have gathered lots of great panelists who will be able to discuss. And the topic of this round table will be empowering women via ethical business values. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to our moderator for this panel. Again, the lady has been working very, very hard today. Dr. Ingrid Vassiliou-Feltes, the Country Director for the WBAF USA Country Office. The floor is yours, Ingrid. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thanks for being our MC, Kevin. We really appreciate your help. So now we're gonna start our roundtable. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce our panel. One of our panelists unfortunately could not join today. Swati Mandela sends her regrets. She had a last-minute emergency, so she's sending all her support to us. She's super engaged in our efforts, but we will still have a great panel. We have amazing guests, and of course, our very own president of our Ethical Governance Standards of Excellence and Quality Leadership Committee at WBAF, Fadi Saab. And then, of course, we also have Danielle Kanata, who's our keynote speaker today. I will introduce you in a minute. And of course, Dr. Ken Goodman. Same thing, he will be part of our panel today. I will introduce you just in a second. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. As everybody knows, the pandemic, of course, has affected businesses worldwide. Our focus today will be on raising awareness about ethical business values, and the special topic will be presented by Danielle. For those of you that might not know Danielle, she is a senior counsel for SABIC America's Legal Affairs, where she manages the international trade compliance team and supports the corporate sustainability department on compliance, ethics, and social sustainability issues. Prior to this, she spent several years in Washington, D.C. at the O'Melveny Myers law firm. She also serves as the B20 Task Force co-chair and is SABIC's representative on the World Economic Forum's Partnering Against Corruption initiative. Welcome, Danielle. We really love to have you on the panel. Dr. Ken Goodman is the co-founder of the North American Center for Ethics and Health Information Technology. He's also the founder and director of the Institute for Bioethics and Health Policy, affiliated with the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine, and also the director of the Center for Data Ethics and Society that is affiliated with the Institute for Data Science and Computing. And he has many other titles that would fill 7 pages, but I have to leave them out in the interest of time. So thank you both for joining us. And without further ado, I'm gonna let Danielle guide us through a special presentation, and I will share the screen for you, Danielle, in a second, okay?
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Please let me know if everybody can see the screen well. Danielle, are you comfortable? Do you see the screen well?
Yes. Go ahead and get started.
Okay.
Okay.
The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. I am really pleased to be here, and I'm very excited to present to you a project that we are doing under the auspices of B20 Saudi Arabia. And so Ingrid, if you want to just kind of move to slide number, I guess 3, 1, 2, 3. I don't know if it's going ahead. I still see we're on the first one. Okay, perfect. Okay, well.
It's frozen, the screen is frozen?
A little bit frozen. I'll just talk through it, it's okay, go back one, yeah.
Can you see it now?
Let's just go back. Yeah. Okay. To get started. So this year, Saudi Arabia holds the presidency of the Group of 20, which is the world's 20 largest economies. This is the central forum for international cooperation on financial issues and increasingly the key international arena for questions of global governance. And a key element of the G20 is the annual Leaders Summit, where the G20 heads of state come together to decide on reforms at both the national and multinational levels. And the voice of business at this summit is raised through the Business 20 or B20. And given the fact that B20 Saudi Arabia put economic empowerment of women at the top of its policy agenda for this year, the B20 Integrity and Compliance Task Force is using this platform to launch a
Danielle, we
project
lost you a
around
little.
gender and anti-corruption. And so starting with the supply chains of B20 multinationals in several countries. The initiative is going to grow the movement for women's role. Can you not hear me? Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
we have a very hard time. You're fading in and out. You have a very unstable internet. Danielle, we lost you.
Can you hear me?
No. Sorry, everybody, for the technical problems.
Ingrid, can you hear me?
Now we can hear you, but you were completely out.
It's really garbled.
Yeah.
Give me one.
Would you like me to present the slides on your behalf, read them out, or no? Sorry, everybody, for the technical difficulties. We also lost your video, Danielle. Well, in the interest of time, I might actually share a few of the slides, and then as soon as we have Danielle back, she can maybe join in the panel discussion. I've participated on most of these training sessions, so luckily I'm aware of the project.
Ingrid,
Okay.
I'm sorry, can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Do you mind if I just continue?
Please, please. That's why we invited you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think I just lost internet connection for a minute, but I guess I'm back. So great. So as I was saying, when the program is starting with the supply chains of B20 global multinationals in several pilot countries, and this initiative will grow the movement for women's role in promoting ethical business through training and mentoring and building networks of women capable of advocating for change. And so basically the way that or kind of an overview of what we are doing is that studies have shown that women may face disproportionately high levels of corruption in every step of the economic cycle within the business world. And in many countries, women face a lot of points of corruption in their personal lives and in their role as the family's caretaker. So in trying to access healthcare for their families, in trying to access education for their children, in trying to access housing and other public benefits, they often are facing corruption. And when you're living in a society like that, you know, people start to sort of develop this perception that this is just the way things are. And then when they get into the business world, they can sometimes kind of carry that perception with them. And so what we are doing through the B20 Integrity and Compliance Task Force is to develop training, anti-corruption training, that is aimed specifically at women. And our B20 member companies will be able to use this training to complement their existing compliance programs and existing supply chain capacity building programs. In addition, we're also coming up with a mentorship program in which women in member companies act as mentors to women in SMEs and women entrepreneurs. And so by educating and empowering women to identify and report corruption, the idea is that companies and their entire supply chains will benefit. And so if we look at the slide that Ingrid is showing now, we have, no, go back, two versions of the training. So one version is for multinational companies. And with the multinational companies, we really want to raise kind of the gender angle of corruption, because in multinational companies, there's generally already an anti-bribery, anti-corruption program. People are generally already getting training, but they're not getting training from like sort of a gendered perspective. So that's for the multinationals. And then the other version of the training is for women in SMEs and women entrepreneurs. And really the idea is to sort of examine what is corruption, and then also what can I do about it? How do I resist solicitation when it's happening? So that's kind of what the training modules are about. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, and so we actually have about 80 companies that are participating in this project. And the B20 member companies are kind of helping to pull together their ideas about training, different scenarios of solicitation and what to do about it, just based on sort of lessons learned and different experiences that the companies have had. And so we have a lot of inputs coming from, as I said, over 80 member companies. And then we're trying to kind of put those inputs together into training materials that we can then hand over to our B20 member companies at the B20 Summit, which will take place in Riyadh in October. And then the companies can kind of carry that training forward. Okay. So maybe we'll go to the next slide, which is training implementation. And as I was saying, the companies will, the B20 member companies will be invited to incorporate the training modules into their compliance programs and take the training forward. And we're also talking to some different international organizations about possibly becoming kind of the administrative home for this project after B20 Saudi Arabia ends, so that we can have sort of, we can have some administrative oversight, we can have some tracking, some metrics, and a resource for our B20 member companies and their supply chain partners to turn to in order to really give this program life after this year is over. Okay, next. So in addition to training, the other piece of this is that we're really encouraging our B20 member companies to participate in a mentoring program. And so with regard to the mentoring program, the idea is that we will do training, right? So there will be training for women in SMEs and women entrepreneurs, women working in developing countries. And then we will also give them access to the compliance professionals in these multinational companies going forward in order to continue to further their learning, in order to help them to transfer knowledge. So if they want to set up, if they're working in a smaller company, or if they're an entrepreneur, they want to set up their own anti-bribery program. They want to set up a whistleblower program. They want to kind of understand how to do that. They'll have access to someone in a major multinational who can kind of help them along the way. So the mentoring we feel is important in order to really build capacity and really transfer knowledge to these smaller companies that may not otherwise have access. And I think the other really important point here, especially for countries where gender segregation is much more accepted or the norm, is that to the extent that these women entrepreneurs, women in SMEs feel more comfortable talking about these issues with other women, reporting to other women, having other women help them to set things up, then they'll be able to do that, right? So it's also kind of creating a safe space for women to network and really, build their skills in an environment that's welcoming to them. Okay, so basically we'll have the mentors from the B20 companies engage with mentees in their supply chains. So either, customers or suppliers, so that there is a business benefit there, right? So that the B20 member companies are able to say to their stakeholders, look, we are trying to make a difference in our supply chain. We are interested in a cleaner and more ethical supply chain. And here's, something concrete that we're doing. So, there's sort of a benefit for the mentoring organization as well as for the mentees and their organization. So just kind of to wrap up, as I was saying, I think we can go to the last slide, which is next steps. We've been meeting sort of throughout this B20 cycle for this year. We'll have an official rollout during the B20 summit in October. And then after the Saudi B20 presidency ends, an administrative body such as a think tank or NGO or international organization will be selected to house the program. So that's really it. That's the plan. And I would just conclude by saying that we are very excited that we have so much interest from so many multinationals who are participating in the B20 process this year, because it really tells us that there is a recognition out there that we should be looking at corruption through a gendered lens and helping to empower women to fight it and to make change in their companies and in their local geographies.
Thank you, Danielle. Great overview. We really appreciate it. And now we'll kick off our roundtable discussion. I'm sure everybody has a lot of thoughts about all the opportunities and challenges in terms of business ethics. So maybe we'll kick off with our president of the ethics committee, Fadi. Would you like to share some? Baybars, you want to also say? Please, sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say a few words. I want to welcome Madam Minister of Finance of the Republic of Kosovo, Hikmet Bajrami. She has just joined, and I have invited her to follow the panel from the panelist part. She is also following. She will come to the video now because and I think it is good that to see a Madam Minister, a woman leader, also in a woman ethics panel, and she is also a professor of management in Kosovo. So I'm welcoming Madam Minister. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Greetings to everyone. I hope you are doing well in those pandemic crisis in your respective countries. I wish you all the best, and I congratulate you for the country office in US. This is a big step for the World Business Angel Forum. I'm very glad to be part of it. I've been following actually almost since the beginning, but sometimes on and off because of the network. So I liked all the presentations and experiences, and I hope I will be able to contribute to the Business Angel Worlds Forum. It's really a great pleasure to be part of this forum. We, as other countries, are facing the pandemic crisis, and being in the position of Minister of Finance is really challenging during these times because the budget revenues have decreased. Meanwhile, the expenditures of managing with COVID-19 are increasing from day to day. So the economy needs to have a support, and I think helping the startups, especially those ones who already have started, it's a big step. So I'm glad to be part of it, and I hope that in the next meetings I will have also a presentation to share the experiences from our countries. But let me just congratulate and wish you all the best. Thank you, Baybars. Thank you very much.
So Baybars, if no other comments, maybe then we can have Fadi share some of the recent wonderful work that the committee has done and some of your insights on the business ethics values.
Hello, everybody. First, let me start by congratulating you and Baybars, Ingrid, on the opening of the WBAF USA Country Office. And thank you for inviting me to participate on this panel. I'm inspired by some of the opening session remarks and would like to start with a few remarks about the business success general environment. Firstly, I think it's important to note that there is only one yardstick. Success is insensitive. It doesn't care if one is just lucky or a real hard worker. And there are no extra points for effort or hard work. What counts is only the result, irrespective of the journey. Also, success is binary with a 0 or a 1 result. There are no grades or percentile curve scores. It's either a plus or a minus. So you can't say I almost did it or I was just a few steps away. There's only yes, I succeeded, or no, I failed. And of course, success is blind. It doesn't differentiate between black or white, fat or thin, tall or short. And most importantly, it does not differentiate between women and men. Number two, there are many obstacles to the journey of being a successful entrepreneur or a successful company for that matter. SMEs face a number of hurdles that are common to most of them, irrespective of their specific activity, ownership structure, or management teams, or any other elements of their internal structure. These, as been mentioned, basically is access to finance, which is of course access to affordable funding, access to scaling and the need for sustainable markets, access to senior management talent and qualified staff, and to innovations, new technologies, and to competitive resources. So no matter what happens, these obstacles remain a major hurdle for us to overcome, and we should not lose sight of them and keep focusing on how to go beyond them and break them, basically. Then I think there are many prerequisites for success. So we should, not give up. We should continue in this race. And the formula is to combine things like knowledge, which is higher education and proper training, with human and capital resources, and of course financial means, with proper planning, both on the strategic and on the operational levels, and with positioning competitively and comparatively in relation to other players. And most importantly, in providing value-added services, deliverables that are measured by their quality and tangible benefit. And finally, the journey is long, so we need to be well prepared, and we need to invest with a lot of hard work and there are no shortcuts. And I think I'll get the few anomalies about people who have succeeded without a lot of apparent effort are not the benchmark. The benchmark is really the hard work. So one should not give up easily. And my advice is to remember two famous sayings: winners never quit and quitters never win. And of course, the very well-known phrase, if at first you don't succeed, try again. Now back to the subject of women-specific hurdles. And despite what I've just pointed, which is both men and women face many of the same startup challenges, I think that women in general suffer from certain masculine-based environments with legal or cultural or religious or even political causes that lead them to rely more on the security of what they know how to do, their personal passions or their personal habits, or on their own past experiences rather than on the availability of attractive new business opportunities. Also, women seem to be more fearful of failure. Thus, they tend to limit themselves to areas that are less risky or that are only within their own comfort zones, which is further aggravated by the fact that they don't have the same established business networks as men, and they usually don't get the same funding opportunities as easily as some men do. So women face more challenges in obtaining adequate professional assistance, maybe because they're a bit timid or shy in asking for help. And also maybe because some men dominate a lot of what I'm going to call gender bias support clubs or associations, and they, relatively speaking, do not attempt to create a favorable business environment for everybody. And lastly, probably women are confronted with a lot of socially biased or negative expectations about their ability to successfully balance family lives and business responsibilities. And they face the extra challenge that demand this effective time management and efficient task delegation. Now back to ethical behavior, it's obvious that in all its components of honesty, fairness, transparency, good governance, social responsibility, antitrust, gender equality, whatever, will bestow an added layer of confidence on any business activity, and especially in support of the battle of women to overcome the hurdles that I just talked about. But despite all of what I've just said, allow me to close my remarks by being very honest and quite blunt about any suggestion coming from our title that women need to be mostly empowered via focusing on ethical business values. In my opinion, while women can undoubtedly benefit from effective support tools in general, however, they certainly do not need this empowerment to be unproportionately concentrated on ethical business values. For as a matter of fact, I believe that women can surely teach men a lesson or two about this topic. And empirical evidence have confirmed that women act more ethically than men in a variety of circumstances with greater commitment to applying higher moral standards. So indeed, both women and men entrepreneurs or investors or managers or professionals face a number of important obstacles. And this is why I invite both of them, women and their men colleagues, to join WBAF in implementing the principles of our ethical governance, excellence standards, and quality leadership committee. And I thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Wonderful introduction. Dr. Goodman, you have worked with a lot of committees globally. Oh, Baybars, you want to say something? Oh, no, okay. You have worked with a lot of international committees and you chair several of them. Would you maybe share with our panelists and the rest of the audience some of your vision and insights on business ethics and the issue that we are discussing today, which is empowering women through business values?
Thank you very much for that. Yes, I would, or I'm afraid so. What I've learned from Danielle, and forgive me for framing it this way, is that contingent on my jurisdiction, women's lives matter. What I learned in an AI lab some years ago, it was a machine translation lab, and one of the teams was from Tokyo, the other was from Barcelona. And as we were trying to build our modules for machine translation, the scientific model that we came up with in this AI system was an interlingua. Namely, you don't translate directly from Japanese to Spanish. You translate from Japanese or from Spanish or from English or from Arabic into an interlingua from which you can then translate to any number of languages. Some of the first work on that was done in the EU when they realized they needed to translate manuals for tractor parts into the languages of the EU. And if you're a human, there's nothing more tedious than translating manuals for tractor parts, so I'm told. The idea of that kind of a linguistic universal undergirds what some of the things that Fadi and others have said, namely that in terms of universal values, we actually tend to agree a great deal. There's no dilemma, there's no conflict. We actually, in the business world, when it's at its best, succeeds precisely because we agree on what those values are. If you take the intersection of information technology, gender, compliance, ethics, and even education, to include the component of mentoring, what you see as an opportunity, and I see through the work here, an unprecedented opportunity to signal those shared values. Ethics is very often, as we try and teach our students, and we teach them around the world, the same thing. There are certain things that are obviously right or wrong, good or bad, blameworthy or praiseworthy. But the practical utility of ethics in the business world, the scientific world, in terms of science and medicine, is in helping you address challenges that you face even though you did nothing wrong. So I can say it till I'm blue in the face, but I'm not a sexist. I don't discriminate against women. And yet, depending on how my corporation is structured, depending on how the supply chain is managed, depending on the governance policies I have in place, I may be missing an opportunity to do a better job. This applies, by the way, under the hood when it comes to software engineering. Fadi made an interesting point about women behavior when it comes to ethics. We've seen also that women software engineers actually tend to do a far better job when it comes to annotation, version control, and attestations of provenance. I don't know why that is. It sounds vaguely sexist in reverse. But the point is that when we identify practical ways of improving our tools and improving our businesses, we actually can drive the kind of cultural change that actually Gerard mentioned at the very beginning. The example of Edison was a beautiful one, and the opposition from the oil companies. Our cultures change because they need to. And in my opinion, globally, and this isn't true in the business world, in the scientific world, they change because not so much they were forced to, but because they realized that they were doing something that was both wrong and inefficient in terms of business. The beautiful thing about ethics is that it's not a matter of holding hands in a circle and getting in touch with your feelings, although we could do that later. It's a matter of solving difficult problems. And when you do that, there's nothing about that, or for example, or for that matter, compliance, that's bad for business. It improves business. You may have heard that the Stone Age did not end because we ran out of stones. It ended because it was no longer a good way to do business. And as science progresses, as technology progresses, so do our societies. The idea that we're having this discussion, maybe 2020 is a little bit too late for it, but the role of women in global business has never been more important and more powerful. And unless we get it right, then all the talk about ethics and compliance will be inadequate to the task. And so what you're hearing here from a truly international and global perspective is a newly recognized moral obligation. And I think that the tools of applied ethics, the international tools of applied ethics, are readily available to help meet those challenges. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a very detailed answer. We really appreciate it. Danielle, I was wondering if you wanted to add a few comments on this broader topic of business ethics values and your perspective. You're on mute. You're on mute. Danielle, you're on mute.
Okay, I fixed it.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sure, no problem. So thank you. I think that when we look at the challenges that we have to overcome in order to empower women and our opportunities to create a global culture of ethics, it is really important for us to kind of take a holistic view, and maybe, especially for those of us in the more developed countries, to look outside of our own sort of cultural framework. Because if we're kind of just approaching business from our own cultural framework, we're maybe not considering some of the things that I'm talking about in this project that I'm doing with the B20 companies. So namely, you know, if you have women who are operating in cultures that are extremely male dominated, if you have women who are, you know, sort of the opinion that, you know, things aren't really going to change, this is just the way things are, the legal system is so male dominated that I'll never get recourse for things that happen to me, you have to start thinking a little bit more holistically and a little bit more creatively in order to impact changes in your supply chain. Because if you don't start looking at compliance and ethics from the perspective of your wider stakeholders, you're really not you're kind of missing the bigger picture. You're missing the opportunity to really create change. And you know, there's been discussion today about women having you know, better ethics, women having higher moral standards, women being more detail oriented. I mean, all of these are great qualities, but really the challenge is to you know, empower women to really be the agents of change and to really have the skills to help to be part of the solution to some of these ethical challenges that are out there.
Thank you.
If I might very briefly.
Please.
Just very briefly, I think Daniel's made an important point. I think it will serve none of our purposes to further lens the feminine mystique. I don't doubt the ability of women to be corrupt. What the larger point, however, is that empirically there's evidence that so far in many cases you see that, and moreover, it's good for business. There's nothing about gender equality. There's nothing about following rules in ethics and compliance and having robust ethics education that's bad for business. The pluses that Fadi was talking about, it's an empirical proposition or a hypothesis, but I would wager you get more pluses in your business column the more you do those things. In other words, it's not simply to be virtuous, but that's not a bad thing. It's because on balance, we've discovered is that tending to these things is good for business.
Yeah, I would agree. It's good for business. And I think the other sort of trend that we're seeing more and more out there is that your stakeholders are going to be, they expect it. They are starting to demand it. I mean, your customers want to do business with companies that are really standing out in terms of ethics and compliance. Lenders, investors, certainly you have this whole like ESG investor movement that's very, you know, just continuing to kind of gain in popularity. And you also have younger investors. I mean, there's a lot of talk now about wealth kind of being transferred to the younger generation and what they are looking for. And so, you know, I think if you need to give like sort of a one-liner answer to businesses about why they should do this, it's that it's your stock price. Like if you want to positively impact the value of your company, then do things that stakeholders are going to notice and make yourself a company that stakeholders are going to want to invest in.
Thank you. That's a great segue to one of the other topics we wanted to maybe have a chance to hear all of your insights on. Like we mentioned, until now, we have challenges, but I think there are also opportunities. And we talked before about training programs and education. So maybe Fadi, can you give us your vision on if you feel that the role of education and training can serve a big purpose in reshaping the global ethics ecosystem?
Yeah, sure. But let me start by saying that whether getting women more into the business environment is supply-driven or demand-driven is not going to make it. What's going to make it is the ability of women who want to lead the change to forcefully, through lobbying, through proving themselves, through breaking the, the standard traditional obstacles, and changing the way we do business. So going through more education is a good thing to do, of course, but also for men, it's the same thing. Being part of associations like WBAF is great, but that is not going to make it. Really change, there's a lot of resistance to change. And I think it was Darwin who said that humans who are survive are those who are who resist change, who are the people they are now having. Humans who resist change disappear, and the species who are most flexible to change are the ones who survive. So my general point is, please, push forward on the lobbying and push forward on making the change in the fundamental way we do business, rather than only by doing more focused training. It's not enough. Now back, Ingrid, to your question. I think that today with COVID-19, there have been added pressures on us all, and especially on women in business. Basically, in addition to training, I'd like to remind you all that WBAF issued a statement through an open letter to G20 leaders, which I have it on my screen. Allow me to read it for you, because it identifies 3 basic action steps. And I think they're important, and they can be easily adopted by us all. First, giving more attention to moral values, which is to pursue the highest standards of ethics, integrity, transparency, and accountability with regard to business to government services, business to business transactions, and business to customer dealings. Second is digitalization, which is embracing advancements in technology that facilitate the use of e-services for private and public sector and all interactions with stakeholders in the business cycle ecosystem. And third is reform. Lobby decision makers for anti-corruption measures that will protect customers from fraudulent activities, and for policies and procedures that will encourage equal commercial opportunities for honest competition based on price, quality, and service. So my point is that, yeah, let's all join forces, but let's do it in an effective, focused manner, rather than try to adapt what we used to do in the past to what we need to do in the present. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Dr. Goodman, I know you're very involved in digital ethics. Given the highly virtualized and digitalized environment we're dealing with, do you want to make some comments on how you believe digital ethics fits in this discussion?
Thanks for that. Yes, and it's a good transition, I think, from Fadi's remarks. The role of education, and I think Danielle made the point about mentorship very nicely. I have somewhere in my files a copy of the Enron Code of Ethics. I really do. In fact, I mean, it must be online somewhere, but I made it's old enough for me to have a photocopy, right? And everybody at Enron had to sign it. And yet the kind of culture that we are talking about is one that's not, it's not about arm waving. It's not about a charade. It's about looking under the hood, if you will, at how institutions, in this case businesses, but others operate. And it may be that when it comes to a digital world, we have a really good opportunity to do that. Certain software tools to protect security, for example, blockchain being the best known example, evolve for several different reasons, but they serve very useful social goals. And so that at one level, at that tranche, you see an opportunity to say, here are the ways that information technology can help us achieve other goals and support other values. But information technology itself raises new ethical issues. And we've been learning this in lots of different ways. So depending on your algorithm and the training set, it may be that it is biased against women or people of color or people with disability, for example. No one who built those training sets was a sexist or racist or an ableist, but nevertheless, as an artifact of the way we just do business, we were not mindful of that collateral damage. When it comes to software engineering, there's a chance for us to do a better job in the future. The people say, well, there's the computer and you turn it on. But in fact, what we've learned, especially at the seam between with the Venn diagram, if you will, between international values, ethics, and information technology, that bit in the middle is crucial because that has to do with how we write our software and our data and maintain and build our databases and do other things related to what is we call software engineering ethics for quite some time. We've also discovered in a sort of an embrace around that is the very idea that you can use any tool for any number of purposes. And what WBAF and other organizations I think have already begun to do quite well, thank you, is saying, here are the ways that you can identify appropriate uses and appropriate users of our various technologies. And so when you find that Venn diagram, and it's one I think that should be very useful for all of us, ethics, information technology, and global business, if you will, we have an opportunity to point out how artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so forth, especially in a big data world, are able to help us realize the universally shared values I mentioned earlier. I mean, if I said to you, I think we've got some really good software that'll help me with my secret goal for world domination. You might say, well, yeah, it might work for that, Ken, but world domination is not a worthy goal. Or I want to suppress one gender or race or nationality or another. I mean, at that extreme, you see that that's ethically preposterous. It's when, without intention, we might actually have adverse events that we realize that evaluating software in the context of use becomes an obligation. That there's nothing in any of the compliance documents that says that, and yet there's something that we can identify as an ethics standard that I think would help improve, that would improve the environment in search of the goals that we are agreeing we ought to set our sights on. It's positive, it's forward-looking, it's universal, and I think that we can do this. It's also, well, you know, when you're a hammer, everything's a nail. And so a teacher would say, so the key component here is education. You forgive me, we fooled around with the machine translation software in the early days. And by the way, anybody who uses the online translators are looking at the descendants of the work that was done from Eurotra, by the way, back in the 80s. But somebody typed in idioms, because idioms are very culturally specific. The one someone fooled with was the English idiom, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And they translated it into Russian, where the translation was, well, the vodka is very good, but the meat's gone bad. When you lens all of what we've been saying through culture, you realize that without anybody intending to be malign, you will find tensions. And resolving those intercultural tensions, I think, is among the greatest utilities of applied or practical ethics.
Thank you. Danielle, do you want to also make additional comments on this topic?
So, you know, I mean, I guess I agree. And I mean, I might just say that, yeah, I mean, there are different ways to impact reforms. There are different ways to impact change. And I would maybe just say that, you know, I think from my perspective and my focus, you know, doing the on the ground change is kind of just as important as lobbying decision makers or doing some of the more kind of high level and you know, lofty reforms.
Showing that it's practical matters. I mean, we are demonstrating at every level you described that there's real practical utility. And it's also, by the way, with good case studies and engaging challenges, it's interesting. I've been to compliance workshops, and as have you all, and they were, how should I say this? Nobody in this room would ever do such a thing, but I've been to some such that they were less engaging than they might have been because they consisted in a lot of finger wagging. What's wrong is wrong, and we need to identify it and call it out, and then identify at the levels you've described the practical ways in which leaders of institutions can send a signal that, one, we're not going to tolerate certain things, but we're also going to create an environment in which you'll be supported in managing these challenges. I think we're agreeing with each other, but from slightly different perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I think we're coming towards the last round of questions, and then we're going to have closing remarks. But I just wanted to maybe get all of your insights on one more aspect that also someone in the chat mentioned earlier. How can we ensure that whatever we decide to do to train and educate men and women, doesn't matter, that we can embed any type of training in the broader ethics programs and compliance programs that businesses have? And the way I would translate that is, what measures of success, what elements of success do each one of you think we can have in order for our efforts to be sustainable and also embedded in all other elements of the business operations? Fadi, you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, thank you, Ingrid. Well, I'm a traditional person. I think there is something called a code of ethics, as Ken mentioned, which needs to be there, which we need to understand and sign off on, but that's not good enough. What we need to do is actually into the corporate culture and into our daily lives. And for businesses, this translates to corporate governance. Corporate governance includes many of the issues we just mentioned about being an opportunity employer, about being ethical, about non-discrimination, about respecting minority shareholders, etc. So my advice in a few words is that we need to go back to applying proper corporate governance. And I would like to thank Baybars for creating the corporate governance and SME support center at the WBAF Business School, which will help our community and the whole ecosystem associated with WBAF to move forward on this. And my last comment regarding pushing for change is that we need to have laws enacted so that, for instance, we cannot have a senior management team that does not have a certain percentage of women. You cannot have board of directors without women. You should not hold panels like the ones we're discussing right now without, and we can do a lot either by imposing laws in that, or you can impose a law by just boycotting what we think is not proper in terms of gender equality. And these are my conclusions. Thank you.
Thank you. Danielle?
Sure. So I think if we want to think about what are the measures of success, or why are we doing this? What are the benefits? We can think about from like a business perspective. We can, I think there are things we could sort of all agree on. Like, it's good to strengthen your ethical culture. It's good to support your CSR initiatives. It's good to take opportunities to pass on best practices and encourage new ideas, to strengthen your supply chains, to address stakeholder expectations, that companies build compliance capacity in their supply chains, to improve employee motivation and work satisfaction, to give professional development, and to collectively draw attention to issues that people find to be important. And then so I think there are a lot of ways to kind of measure success, both, so that might be sort of from the business perspective, and then from the perspective of the organizations or the smaller businesses that you're helping, or the individuals that you're trying to kind of bring along with you. Again, measures of success could be like increasing professional self-confidence and self-awareness, getting new insights into behavior and practices, sounding boards for new ideas, working through challenges, acquiring skills and knowledge, increasing career development opportunities. So it's not really just about like building a more ethical culture, but it really has other sort of benefits throughout the organization. And so I think there's a lot of different ways that you can measure success, but certainly there are a lot of different potential benefits out there.
And Dr. Goodman, you've been in academia and developed countless ethics curriculums throughout your career. What is your opinion on some elements of success and measures of success?
So it's a reasonable thing to say to ask for measurable goals and objectives for many things. And I think it's also true of the kind of cultural change that we're talking, that we are having this conversation here today is a goal that 20 years ago, 30 years ago would have been seemed utterly unattainable, would have seemed utopian. The idea that we're having discussions about the role of women in business now, imagine it when Edison was building light bulbs. Right? Sometimes change happens slowly, and I'm not sure at how fine a granularity we need to measure this. But the fact we're having this conversation, the fact that WBAF the codes of ethics are now ubiquitous, that we've learned about mistakes from the previous ones, that workers, and I mean workers throughout this entire supply chain into the E-suite, are mindful of these issues. There are always going to be people who are going to try and find ways to game the system, but that we've already come this far, that corruption as a discussion, as a nameplate discussion topic, would not have been possible when I started developing those curricula. Now what we do is we get to say that here the corruption part's not ethically very interesting. I mean, if I come to you and say, I don't know, Danielle, I'm thinking of robbing a bank with a firearm, but I'm having some moral distress. Would you advise me? You'd say, Ken, I think you missed some really important days in school. There's nothing ethically interesting there. Don't do that. But if you say, Ken, I think you're altering some of the data in the spreadsheet to show a better return than possible, can we talk about that? You're now being sensitized in conjunction with the very important point that Fadi made about governance, that we have already changed our businesses. We could, I think, part of the mission now in curriculum development is to come up with ways that we can measure our successes with finer granularity. But I want to make it clear that I think that the successes already have been transformational. They've been noteworthy. They've improved the growth of business, and for that matter, profits. And they have been more amenable to capturing the points that you've been making about the role of women in business. This is no longer negotiable. It's not very ethically interesting to say, I just prefer to discriminate against women. We've changed the world, and that's measurable. Now we get to do it in ways that will continue to reduce corruption and other forms of social social misadventure that sometimes the business world is associated with. It's a great opportunity.
Thank you.
Sorry, Ingrid,
Well,
please
go ahead.
Remark, Ken, I'd like to add on what you said back going to my definition of being binary. I think in corruption is binary. It's either you're corrupt or you're not corrupt. There's no petty corruption or there's no great corruption. It's yes or no. Same thing I should apply to gender equality. And either we adhere to the principles of gender equality or we don't. It should not be flexible. It should be black or white. And if we do that, and we have a zero tolerance level, then hopefully we will push the system until it cracks and it opens up. So we should be very aggressive. Some women are aggressive about change, but they are being maybe looked at as being too bossy rather than playing leadership role. Some men are pushing a lot as being too protective of their environment. But these are anomalies we should work in between, and we should keep the pressure going so we have yes or no. We can't have an in-between gray area. Thank you.
What we can, though, is support people who are, so for example, Fadi, suppose you see that I'm doing something corrupt. You've done nothing wrong. I think you would agree that we want our institutions, our businesses to support you in managing that. If you see that I'm involved in sexual exploitation of women, you're not doing that, but we want our institutions to support you in managing that. We want to empower women to be able to do it. Well, maybe there's no gray areas. If you're on the wrong side of someone doing something wrong, we want to support you in managing that. And I think that's part of what to follow Ingrid's generous opportunity to comment on curricula is what a robust internal business ethics curricula can accomplish.
I totally agree. It comes back to your point about the culture. You should have the culture and you should actually live it rather than just write it and put it on the wall. And speaking of supporting, the benchmark should be very high so that you can easily be put against that benchmark and see the change that was done regarding exploiting their children, for example. Many major companies had to change their methodology of production because they were exploiting children. And that happened because of the community pressure. The same thing I think can be done on women empowerment.
Great. I think we had a wonderful discussion. I really enjoyed the interaction with all of you. I'm going to pass in a minute back to Kevin to introduce our keynote closing speaker. I just wanted to make one comment and thank again Gerard and Baybars for the opportunity, because even for the GBA, I'm their chief ethics officer, and that's yet another synergy between WBAF and GBA. Both organizations care a lot. They have a robust ethics program. With the GBA, we've created the foundation for a global ethics framework, and we're working very hard within all our committees to customize that framework for each industry and domain. So I'm very proud to be part of the ethics team that Fadi recently put together, and I'm looking forward to continuing the work with the GBA on ethics. And now, Kevin, thank you again for helping us, and thank you again to everybody for attending. We've had a lot of support in the chat. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much, Ingrid, and thank you to all the panelists for your great energy and your fantastic insights on this topic. And it's really good to promote ethics and female leadership. And this is proof of that all that was being presented before in the plan of action for WBAF USA is already being put into practice with all these exchanges. So before we conclude, and as concluding remarks, I'd like to hand the floor back to the rector of our WBAF Business School and the former Group CEO of Turk Telecom, Dr. Paul Douani, for his closing remarks.
Yeah, thank you very much. I heard a lot of very interesting things, and I've listened very well to Daniela and Ken and Fadi and Ingrid on this subject. So let us start in a concluding statement to say let's look at the shareholders and the investors who are basically investing in a company. And then in the company, you have the corporate governance structure you described, where you have a board that should be independent from the operation as much as possible, ideally. And then you have the management. And then you have all of your reporting and disclosure obligations if you're public. And you have your internal rules and procedures and everything. So I heard a very interesting statement, for example, and I think it was Ken who said it, said that, what do you do if you're working in a company and you see something wrong according to the company rules, right? I mean, it's not your personal opinion of what's right and wrong. What would you do? I mean, and it's not just about, you know, being a male or a female, right? So I would like to end this with some provoking statements that may help you think a little bit better about the world we're living in. Madoff was a crook, right? Okay, now the investors that invested with him, do you believe that these investors were honest? Don't you think that those investors suspected that he must be doing something wishy-washy, but if it's making money, then let's make the money, right? So you may have the problem at the shareholder level. We're making money, so let's keep this thing going, right? So you got that dilemma. So that's one level, right? Now let's come to WorldCom. When I was quite young and telecom sector, and we heard about WorldCom. I don't know, I think the older ones of you would probably know that. And they were cooking their telecom books, and they were inflating their EBITDA margins. They had an OPEX in a running contract, and they were capitalizing it. They were applying depreciation onto it in order to boost their EBITDA, boosting their numbers. They got caught. The CFO was complicit with the CEO. No doubt there were some investors who knew that was going on. So the problem that you face in reality in life is that sometimes the system itself is corrupt because it's feeding on its own corruption, yeah, because the beneficiaries are benefiting, right? That's just a Wirecard, a more recent example, tumbling down totally, okay? And I can tell you from my personal experience, okay, so I'm a man, I'm so, okay, fine, but what other men I was competing with tended to be my most interesting experience is when they were crooks, yeah, when they were dishonest. So the price of honesty can be high, and we're living in a world now where it's going to be harder to lie. That's the good news. And that is a world that can benefit from diversity, male, female, all colors, all religions, and everything like that, in all possible ways. And it reminds me of a statement by someone that, you know, you're told from very young age, you know, don't lie, say the truth, right? It's basic, it's everywhere. And I heard this most profound statement said by somebody taking into account the situation where you are in a place where you're earning a living and you can see that things are not going on honestly, but if you speak out, you're dead. And that person affected me a lot when he said that. He said, at least do not upload the falsehood, at least. So if you can't speak up, then don't upload. Let them not feel that way. And this is not about men or women or anything. The fact that diversity comes in and the inclusion of men, good men, and the inclusion of women, good women, that can make this world a more transparent place in disclosure. And that's why you have to have solid audits. You have to have independence in checks and balances in every single process in a company. It is so critical for the shareholder. It is critical for the board members. It is critical for the CEO. It's critical for the management team. And it's critical for everybody working there. And we're moving in that direction. The world is a much better place for what you are doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul, for these closing and motivational remarks. That's been really interesting. And now it's the time to conclude after almost 3 hours, this opening ceremony for the launch of JCI USA, I'd just like to say a few words to see that it's extremely exciting to see the launch of a new WBAF Country Office, and I see that solid foundations are already being built thanks to the hard work of the whole team at WBAF, but especially of Country Director Ingrid for setting this up. And it's a whole product of great teamwork and great partnerships, notably what's been done with the GBA. And the plan of action is extremely solid, and we've got all the ingredients necessary to succeed. And see that because we're familiar with this kind of business model at JCI as well, setting up new national organizations. And this is why I can identify a very solid basis. But the most important thing in setting up a new country office is the talent in the people in charge. And I see that there's huge amounts of talent involved in setting up this office as well. So I'm really mind blown by the enthusiasm. Let me take the opportunity to thank Chairman Baybars for inviting me as moderator. It's been a great honor to be emceeing this session too. Always a pleasure to support WBAF. And it's been great to see so many talented keynote speakers from all around the world, and especially from different governments and ministers and former ministers, which is testimony to the wonderfully high level of this global network which we have. And this, more than just a network, WBAF is a family, and which is why I'm always honored to be here to support, like we all are. So on that note, I'd like to conclude this session. I wish you all the very best, and I believe that there's some more exciting sessions coming up over the next few weeks and months. And yes, and also please support our partners at GBA too, GBA Global. You've got the link in the chat as well. And look forward to seeing you soon in the wonderful world of WBAF. Thank you very much once again, and see you soon. Goodbye, good evening, and catch up soon. Bye.